This is George. This is Citizens Going Wild, thinking of it for yourself in an age of hype and glory. And I wanted to talk today about the upcoming election in New Jersey, which features Phil against Jack. Phil Murphy is the current governor, and he's running for a renewal of his contract. And Jack Cattarelli is a person who's challenging him for the governorship of New Jersey. I think that the key issues should be whether all lives matter or Black Lives Matter. And I think the effect that an election of Murphy will have on the middle class and the changes that will come from the middle class if people vote for Jack Cattarelli. First of all, I don't think I don't think Phil Murphy is very interested in democracy. One of the dividing lines today in our entire society is who controls public legislation. New Jersey is notorious for not having much democracy and of having major decisions made by the court, which of course are a legitimate source of power, but should be, I think, somewhat secondary to democracy. There are lots of voting going on, but our lives are controlled by our court system. The entire government of New Jersey can be divided into two pieces. One piece is the public safety, and the other piece is education. The Supreme Court of New Jersey has taken over half of that budget of the state of New Jersey. And it's made the most important decision that's been made in the last 100 years regarding our education. That case is usually called Abbott versus Burke. And basically what they've done is they decided to give the poor districts more money than the middle class districts. The rich districts are doing just fine, by the way. And what they're doing now is giving about $10,000 more to the poor districts per student than they're giving to the middle class district. They just decided this. Somehow they found just three words, thorough and effective, in the Constitution, which they said meant that they should give $10,000 more to the poor school districts per student than for the middle class. That's one thing. Another thing is that we have a fair amount of racism in New Jersey. Now, I'm not just talking about racism against Black people, but against white people, against Jews, against men. There is affirmative action for Blacks, which I have to agree with. Now, Governor Murphy is not very interested in fighting against all racism. He is against racism against Blacks. But other folks can, I don't know if I'd say go to hell, but he's not very interested. There is racism in gender studies, for example, where men are continuously degraded and women held up as the positive model. There's a person there, Professor Puar, who states that the Jews are stealing body parts from the Palestinians, a bizarre, outrageous lie, which goes back to the Middle Ages, where it was called a blood libel. It has resulted in deaths of many Jews. There's affirmative action for Black people in the state, which I happen to agree with. But in addition, you can be a Black person who just recently arrived from Kenya, Botswana, or any other place in Africa, or the Caribbean, or South America, or Mexico, or just about anywhere. I think affirmative action should be restricted to Black people, and I think Governor Murphy will agree with me. At the university level, certainly who gets hired, including who gets hired as a professor, is governed by race, which is okay if you're dealing with race regarding American Blacks, but it doesn't matter where you come from. As long as you have a dark skin when you arrive, you will be privileged if you apply for a job at the at the university, any university in New Jersey. You'll also be privileged if you apply for a job with the state government, the county government, the town government, any darn government. And I know this for a blunt fact. Who gets in, who gets hired, also who gets a scholarship, all determined by race. You know who's left out? White soldiers who have lost both their legs fighting for this country. The children of white soldiers who have died fighting for this country. No scholarships for them. I better calm down a bit here.
George, do you want
Wait a minute, just a moment.
do you want me to
Just a
wait
moment. I
till-
just want to add a tiny bit more. Under Murphy, there's help for some, but not for all. Under Murphy, Students for Justice in Palestine flourishes at each and every college in New Jersey, state college and state university. Critical race theory flourishes. I think both are racist situations there, and someone should do something. It's a perfect time to challenge the Abbott decision, which gives $10,000 more to poor school districts, because the Supreme Court of the United States, which will surely take this case, is become a good deal more conservative than it used to be. This is a perfect time to teach the values of Western civilization, especially individualism, which means you are judged by the content of your character and not the color of your skin. And that is no longer a subject that you have to take when you go to college in New Jersey here. What has Murphy done to help the middle class? Nothing, 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 except he's taken away some opportunities here. I think if you are middle class, you should vote for Jack Cattarelli. I think if you're interested in the values and you value the values of Western civilization, you should vote for Jack Cattarelli. I think if you are interested in what happens to the military when they come home, you should vote for Jack Cattarelli. You should only vote for people who will like you, who will support you, who will treat you as equal to everyone else in the state. Phil Murphy has shown he is not very interested in racism, except for racism against Black people. If you're in the middle class, if you value the values of the Western civilization, please consider voting for Jack Cattarelli. Thank you. Now my friend here, Larry, will tell me where I've gone wrong.
No, I don't think you've gone wrong, but I do have several questions. Question number one, I am not necessarily against the idea of overfunding poorer districts, because for years they were underfunded. Having said that, nobody, however, seems to be giving an account for this money. Has it been proven that throwing $10,000 at poorer districts actually increases the graduation rate? Has it been, let me finish all my questions.
Okay.
Has it been proven that this actually filters down into getting better teachers, better education? I doubt it. I feel that it's probably.
Let me just interrupt you for a second. There have been two studies that have been done. One, we're using rigorous academic standards, as I would call them, said no, there is no difference. The other one, done in effect by the government that is spending the money, said yes, there is a significant difference. I know that I have not seen any differences during the time that I was teaching, but there's debate about whether it makes a difference or not. If it does make a difference, it might be mighty small, because people using strenuous academic standards haven't been able to find it.
The problem is that using strenuous academic standards seem to have gone by the wayside in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Again, this goes back to a whole bunch of other issues. Maybe they are increasing graduation. Is that because we're getting more social graduation? In other words, kids who aren't ready for 5th grade get socially promoted to 6th grade because it's a disservice to leave them behind. No, it's not a disservice. you have to learn something in order to get graduated to the next grade and next level. I know for a fact from friends of mine who are teachers in the school system and in colleges that the kids who are entering state colleges are many of them are woefully unprepared for the rigors of university academia. They can't read, they can't write, they can't do arithmetic.
Let me just mention something, an example from where I taught in New Jersey. We used to give a test that measured reading ability and mathematics ability, but a lot of kids were not doing the test or flunking the test. And so they had to take remedial classes. And when they took remedial classes, they got mad and left. To avoid losing their tuition dollars, we no longer give the test. So no one gets discouraged.
Maybe it would be a good idea to go to what New York does, which is give the Regents exam. And you cannot move on to higher education until you pass the Regents.
But the Regents is under a lot of pressure now. I wouldn't be.
Well, I understand that too, but that's
Yeah.
all part of the other big picture. Now, having mentioned Jack Citarelli, I'm probably going to vote for him, but I'm very disappointed because in 2017, Jack Citarelli ran in the primary against the person who actually ran in 2017. I forget her name. The one who was the Kim, whatever, she was lieutenant governor under Chris Christie.
Right.
Now, back then, Jack Citarelli was a moderate Republican. He was trying to find out where the taxes went, but otherwise he was moderate. Now he has become much more of a pro-Trump individual, which makes no sense to me in a state like New Jersey. In order for a Republican to win in New Jersey, they have to, and I repeat, have to win the independent vote and actually steal some votes from moderate Democrats who are tired of what's going on with progressive democracy, shall we say. He's not doing this. He's embraced his inner Trump and has come out in Trump's position on all sorts of things. I think this is definitely a losing battle. And I think if anything, it might end up hurting him among people who might have voted for him otherwise. This whole election makes no sense to me, and I think it guarantees another 4 years of Phil Murphy.
I hope you're not right, but you made a very, very good point. I find myself more and more having to compromise when I vote. It's been a long time since I ran down to the polls to be first in line.
Let me ask you this. Do you nowadays ever vote for a candidate, or do you hold your nose and decide to vote for the lesser of two evils?
I do a lot of that. I do a lot of that. I think
it's a sad commentary.
It is a sad commentary. It is a sad commentary. I'm old enough for where there were candidates that you just had to go down there and show your support. Now that's harder. I feel that same way about Jack because I think he is a person who cares about all the people. I think Phil Murphy agrees with the idea that Black Lives Matter. And I think Jack Citarelli believes that all lives matter. So I'm going to vote for him, but I also have some questions for him when he gets in power.
But I hope he gets that far. But in the meantime, the polls are not looking particularly promising. Partially, I think, for the reasons that I've just said. And I think I'm amazed that more people who have children in New Jersey schools are not upset by the advent of critical race theory, not only in college, but apparently filtering down into high school, from what I'm hearing. The 1619 Project, which has been lambasted as a mistelling of history, but actually a mistelling of history.
By the way, you're
Uh,
absolutely right about critical race theory. What is taught in the universities today will be taught in the K through 12 classes in a year or two. And the second largest teachers union has decided that they are going to back enthusiastically critical race theory.
Why?
Why? Because, I mean, according to the statement, they believe that we are still too much a racist country and we need more rehabilitation.
You know, we believe, you and I think, believe in equality, which
Right.
unfortunately has not always come to fruition. As Jews, we know this, and as human beings, we know this in America. However, there is a big difference between equality and equity, which is the
Right.
word being bandied around now, meaning that I have to give up my equity so that somebody else can be improved. It's like a zero-sum game, and it should not be a zero-sum game.
You know, a few years ago, the argument had stopped at the point where most people said, well, we need equality of opportunity, and that's it. But now we've passed that point, and there are now people saying, no, we need equality of results. And if we don't get equality results, that's proof of prejudice, of racism. And this goes against the whole idea, well, the whole idea that Martin Luther King preached. And it's against the whole idea of Western civilization of treating everyone as an individual, not as a member of a group. The last time we treated people as members of the group, the result was a civil war. And I don't know if we're headed that way, but we're not headed directly away from there. You have the final word.
I'm speechless.
All right.